there, and welcome to our Women's Ministry Summer Conversation Series. Today I am speaking with Mary Stier and Jamie Richards, and they're going to tell you a little bit about the LEAD program here at Hope. And if you don't know what that is, just stay tuned. But basically, these are two amazing leaders here at Lutheran Church of Hope who also happen to be women, who I also happen to count as friends. And so we talk about leadership, we talk about generational differences, and we talk about some other things too. So I hope you enjoy the conversation today. Take care. Welcome, Mary and Jamie. I'm so glad to have you both here today.
We're so happy to be here.
This is great. This is great. So this series that we're doing here for women this summer, it's our summer conversation series, and it's based on the idea that it really comes out of the Made to Matter summit that we did in October of last year, when we could do things. But it's this idea that each one of us has been made by God to matter in a way that no one else does. And so we're talking to folks who have said yes to God's call, to their gifts, to the responsibilities that they've been given. And so when I was thinking about women to be a part of this conversation, I knew that I wanted to have a conversation about our generational perceived differences and perceived misunderstandings, because I think that they're not as significant as sometimes they get made out to be, but I want to talk about them, and I want to kind of get that out in the open. And you two have both done a lot of work with some different things around hope, and also just in the communities that you inhabit. And so I'm really excited to hear from both of you. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Well, so where I wanted to kind of start this conversation is to just have each of you share just a little bit about you and kind of how you're spending your time these days. And Jamie, I'll ask you to go first, so we're not talking over one another.
Yeah. You have learned from Zoom conversations, obviously. Order.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So, man, what am I even doing these days? I was talking with a mentor of mine on Monday of this week, and something she said really resonated with me, that each week is a different puzzle. And that to me just felt right. I have tried so hard to have a rhythm of what I'm doing all of the time. And I know that I have that to look forward to, but every day is different and every week is different. So that's the preface. So generally speaking, what I'm doing with my time is I'm working from home, and my roommate moved out, previously scheduled. My roommate moved out. And so now I am just spending a lot of time getting reacquainted with this space and doing a little bit of online shopping. Don't have TJ Maxx and Home Goods, which is better for my pocketbook, but so I'm just settling in and enjoying rearranging things and settling in. And then the other regular things in addition to work are I'm trying to be good about exercise, trying the word there. And then having some quiet time, going to therapy. I have a great counselor that I see on a regular basis, reading, and then finding quality ways of creatively spending time with my people. And so those might be a socially distant park sit at Waterworks Park, or I have a large patio and we can sit out there 10 feet from each other and not touch. And so, or virtual happy hours or lunch dates. So just creative and do the normal life stuff in the middle of all of that. So
yeah. Well, that's great. That's awesome. And what I didn't say is that you are the Revive Minister at Hope. So I'm not sure if there are people watching who maybe don't know that about you, but when you talk about your work, that's what your work is. And in your work, then you lead 20s and 30s, right? In that community in a lot of different ways. And we'll get more into that later. But I love that idea of what did your mentor call it?
Just that every week is a different puzzle.
Yes, that's brilliant. That's really good. I had known in my own mind that as soon as I feel last week that rhythm worked pretty well, then the next week blows up and it's like, okay, that's not going to work this week. So having language for that, that each week is a different puzzle, that's great. Thank you. Awesome. Okay, so then Mary, will you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you are spending your time these days?
Well, do you want me to tell you a little bit about how I came here, or
Yes.
people know that? Okay. So most people know me by the fact that I published newspapers for a long, long time. So I did that for 25 years, and that's how I ended up in Des Moines, publishing the Des Moines Register, and retired from the newspaper business and found my way into ministry. So I always joke that I used to just tell the news, and now I'm passionate about the good news. And so I found my way into ministry, was at Hope on staff for 5 years, and then retired. And and I'm married, and Jeff and I have been married 40 years. We have 2 adult children that I'm crazy in love with, no grandchildren. Wait for that. Patiently hope for that one day. So what am I doing these days? So Jeff and I are sheltered in place because we're older adults, and that's what we're supposed to do. And so our hobby for the last 2 years since we retired was traveling. So can't travel anymore. So I am cleaning out my basement. I'm like Ed Wilson, if you ever watch him on 13. I mean, I am finding things that blow my mind. Like a Scottie Pippen rookie card.
Oh my gosh.
You can't believe the things I'm finding in my basement. So I am really enjoying this. I'm finding old videotapes of when the kids were little, and I can't even tell you how much joy cleaning out my basement is giving me. I am baking again, which I used to bake when I was younger, and then, started working and had a family, blah, 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 and never did that again. I mean, my kids joke that their birthday cakes always came from the Hy-Vee bakery. And so I'm baking again. That's really, really fun. Reading, walking. I love being outside. I've become a lawn guy. You know how there's a lawn guy on your street? I'm a lawn guy now. Loving it. And then working on the leadership program virtually. So that's what I'm doing.
Awesome. That's fantastic. I really want to know, though, what you're doing with all of the things that you're baking. Where are they going? Who is benefiting from your newfound hobby?
In fact, I make these gluten-free, sugar-free chocolate chip cookies, which sound horrible, but they are so good. And so, yeah. Oh, they're awesome. I have to give you the recipe. Yes, they are so good. So Jeff, I used to make them for Jeff, and then I kind of realized they're kind of good. And so I started eating them. And so he said, okay, you have got to stop because I'm gaining too much weight. So he made it 4 days. And then he said, you can make those again. I'll give you the recipe. They're really good.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so Mary, you kind of mentioned the LEAD program, and I'm going to get to that in just a second. But before we even get to that, the reason I wanted to talk with both of you today is, I'm pretty firmly in when we're talking about generational differences and biases and ways we get in our own way. I'm in the, I'm the X, Generation X. Nobody cares about us at all. And then, Mary, okay. You self-identified in the boomer generation. I did not do that to you. I gave you the option to pick whatever one you want, and that's what you chose. And then Jamie, you are in the millennial generation. Yep. And so what I want to ask both of you about is both of you have really beautiful careers. You had beautiful careers, you're in beautiful careers, whether you are working specifically 8 to 5 right now or not, in Mary's case, but you have built a vocation, I guess I would say, that just really leans into your identity and is kind of a culmination of a lot of different things. So what I really want to know from each of you is, where have you kind of seen biases regarding generational differences? Where have you seen those things come into play and take away from who God says that each one of us is and who God would say that we are. So Mary, do you have any thoughts on that first?
Well, okay, so there's a guy I've studied generational patterns for literally decades, and work with a lot of Xers in my newspaper career. I love Xers. They're very realistic and they're kind of snarky sometimes, and they are going to tell you exactly the way it is. And that's what I love about them. And they're very hard workers. They're hard workers. But so there's a guy by the name of Tim Elmore who does a lot of work on generations. And I don't want to go too deep in this, but he says there's 5 areas that are kind of like fault lines. There's stress points in the generations. And the first is speed. So you think of older people, oh, they're so slow. Look at you, move this. And then on the flip side, the older generation's looking at the young one like, slow down, slow down, slow down. You know, you're going too fast. You're running through life. Take a deep breath. So speed. The second one is, and kind of a sense in I want to say in our culture that slow is bad. Not really. The second one is convenience, and the fault line on that is hard is bad. No, it's not. The third one is entertainment. Boring is bad. The fourth one is nurturing. Risk is bad. And the fifth one is entitlement. Hard work is bad. But I love those 5 areas because I think when there's conflict between generations, it usually falls in one of those buckets. So I just wanted to kind of lay that out there because I think that we could riff on that for quite a while.
Yeah. And what I meant to say too earlier with myself, I have teenagers, 19 through 13. So I've got kiddos who are in this Z generation, right? And so I really resonate a lot with even those five points that you just made, Mary, because even in our home, although to be fair, sometimes I'm the one telling my kids, can you do that faster? But I'm also the one saying when they're driving a car, for the love, slow down. So anyway, so I appreciate that framework, Mary. That's really helpful. Jamie, what would you say some of your experiences have been, or would you add to what Mary said?
Yeah, I love that, and I wanted to write those down, but I'll just go back and rewatch this. I'm down, or I'll have Mary send that to me. I will also say that I've learned a lot from Mary about her generational studies. And even how every 4 generations, there is kind of a shift in who leads out of crisis. And this pandemic that we're in right now, who saw this coming? But the millennial generation was poised to lead out of a crisis, and here we are. So I think that's fascinating, which that will get us to lead eventually. When I think about generational differences, the phrase that just simply comes to mind is, they're so blank.
Yeah.
And that to me, like of the other things I could say about generational differences are really just summed up in they're so blank. And we could deconstruct that phrase even, but the thing about that 3-word sentence that stands out to me is the word they, and there automatically puts up a barrier between me and this other person. When I say that someone else does something, I'm automatically saying intrinsically that I don't do that thing, that they do that thing, not me. And that just communicates difference. And so human beings are human beings, and generational differences are not new. You can see generational differences in the Old Testament, in the book Genesis through Judges, where generations would remember God and forget God, and remember God and forget God, and how that worked for them. So it's not new. And any way that we, not just in generational, not just when we're talking about generations, but any time in life we're saying they're so blank, I think the invitation is to look inside and to see, like, I'm so blank.
Right.
And why do I need to be different than someone else? So anyway, I'm actually personally very grateful for the different generations that are in my life. I'm thankful for the mentors that I have. I'm thankful for my peers, and I'm thankful for the people that I get to pass on some wisdom into. And it feels super weird, but I've had interns 10 years younger than me doing young adult ministry now. And I'm like, Oh no.
Mhm. As those things start to sneak up on you, it's always a little bit shocking, isn't it? Yes.
A little weird. So,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
so I'm also really grateful that in my work at Hope, in my work in Seattle, because I worked in Seattle for 6.5 years coming to Hope, and then in college, I've had phenomenal different generations around me, and we haven't had a ton of like head-butting moments. They're there, but the most helpful thing to me is realizing when I'm thinking they're so, and I need to realize I'm being so. Whatever.
That's awesome. Yep, I love that. I love that. So we've kind of alluded to it a couple times, but this fall, Hope launched a program called Lead that was kind of, Mary, was that a brainchild that leadership kind of came to you and it was kind of this thing where you'd all been thinking about it at the same time, or what? How did we even get to the point where we had this thing?
Okay, I'll give you a little bit of context.
Okay.
So for the last for a 2-year program after I retired, I went through the Apprentice Institute's program on spiritual formation, which is at a master's level through Friends University, and it's run by James Bryant Smith. And it's a program on Christian spiritual formation. Halfway through the program, the teachers posed to the cohort, now that you know, what are you going to do with it? Mm. And I really prayed into that, thinking, oh, I'm retired now. I get to go off into the sunset and do blah, 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 blah. But God just kept laying on my heart, look, Mary, you have spent a lifetime leading. You have studied leadership. You've worked with every generation. You are passionate about young leaders. You were poured into at a very young age. It's time to pay it forward. Mm-hmm. Hope is your home church. They have fabulous millennial leaders. That's what you need to do. So I pitched it to senior leadership, and literally Mike said, he stopped me in the first 5 minutes and said, can you start yesterday? Hmm. And so that was May 1st of last year, okay, when I pitched the and we started the first cohort in the fall.
Yeah, you saw maybe Jamie and I both made a face when you said we pitched it May 1st, and we're both doing the math, and you launched in September.
Yeah. So it's honest. Well, that's a whole nother story, but it's truly been my honor. It's been my honor and joy.
So let's go to this, Jamie. What when you learned about the program, what attracted you to it? What made you say, yes, I need to invest? Because Thursdays, it's a program that happens on Thursdays. Thursdays are not a quiet day for you. Right? Yeah. So for those of you that don't know, Revive meets on Thursday nights. And at that time, we were meeting in the building and Jamie was doing all sorts of things to get ready for that. There's no way you'd set me down for a 2-hour class during the afternoon if I had to preach on a Saturday night. I'll guarantee you that. So, but this was compelling enough to you, Jamie, that you said, yes, I have to be a part of it. So what was it that was attractive to you?
2 words, Mary Stier.
Yeah, I get that too. Yeah.
Ever you say, thank you.
Yeah, well, Mary, I adore you, in case you didn't.
I adore you.
I adore you both.
I adore you, Amanda.
But I genuinely, I didn't know what to expect, but I knew that
none of us did.
Right? Mm-hmm. But I knew that if Mary was in charge, I wanted to be a part of it. Because Mary and I, we'd worked together. We sat in Hubbyland together for I don't even know how many years. But I knew that I trusted Mary, and that if Mary was putting something together for millennial leaders, which many of the names, because Mary, you and I met.
We did, for coffee.
During this, yes, we met and we kind of talked, and you shared some of the thoughts, dreams, invited me to consider being a part of it. And I remember you sharing like who you wanted to be a part of it in terms of like faculty, and just the whole vision was really compelling to me. And then I look back now and think, I mean, we didn't know what 2020 was going to bring. This year was going to, I keep saying, if I had realized, like what was happening, the year started with a continent being on fire with Australia. And then the Shakira, Jennifer Lopez whole thing. And I wanted the world to end just because we needed to stop talking about it. And then now here we are in a pandemic and there's these murder hornets. Like the idea of learning about how to lead in the middle of all of this is still, I'm just so glad that God made this happen through Mary. So what we talked about first semester with strategy and investing in new teams. I mean, all of the things that we talked about first semester are in my life and in my ministry and my leadership paying off like gold at this point in time in a pandemic. So yeah, it's been really phenomenal. Thanks, Mary.
Well, we just kind of joke about it that like most of the time in a leadership class like that, you would give them a case study and you would say, what would you do if there was a pandemic that hit? Well, we didn't need a case study for third semester or 11.
A pandemic, that's never going to happen. Ugh. Stupid.
Oh, I know. It's just been a joy.
So just hearing you mention a couple of the topics, Jamie, those aren't things that building teams, what were the couple of the things that you said?
Yeah, strategy was one of them.
Yeah.
Building teams. Mary led, I could talk about this more later, but Mary led a class period on decision making. And she had asked people to bring a decision to class that we needed to work through, and we could like use this process that she was going to give us to workshop through this so that we could learn it firsthand, this decision-making process. And I had a couple of decisions that I was thinking about bringing, and then on a whim in class decided to just throw those ideas out and pick one that's just this decision that's kind of been dogging me for years. And that was the question of, should I go to seminary? Should I finally do it? I've been running from it for 10 years. It's finally like, it feels like it's breathing down my neck. Yeah. So through that like 90-minute class period, by the end, I was in tears and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to seminary.
Yes, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I'm going to do it. So I applied and I got in and I applied for some scholarships and got in and am now entranced in our candidacy process, which doesn't, the normal human being doesn't need to know about any of those things. But if nothing else, lead got me into seminary. So that's great.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, your question, Amanda. I'm sorry. But
no, that's okay. Well, I was thinking about the leadership topics that you talked about in your time together. These aren't specific millennial problems. You know what I mean? Like these are leadership problems across the board.
You know, it was interesting because I wanted first semester to be on what I called external leadership, which is things that every leader is going to come in contact with. So visioning, strategic planning, building teams, making decisions, discernment, leading from the second chair. Those were the types of topics. I think we gave them 12 topics, and then they picked their top 8. And that's how we came up with the classes. Second semester, we talked about, we started the first semester with the Strength Finders workshop, and the second semester we started with an Enneagram workshop. And second semester was all on spiritual formation, because a lot of times you go into leadership programs, even in a Christian environment, and it's all about how we're going to do more, how we're going to build the ministry. But you have to internally unpack all those layers to understand as a leader what's going to trip me up and get ahead of that. And then the third semester is really looking in terms of what have we learned and where are we going forward as a church. So that's it.
I love it. So what I want to ask you, and this is probably going to be difficult, but was there something that really surprised you, both of you? Maybe you didn't expect to have, Jamie, you just ended up committing to cemetery. I just said that. You ended up committing to seminary,
it feels
which is different from dying. Although
it may feel like you're doing Hebrew.
There may be moments. Anyway, so that was surprising when you decided, okay, I guess I'm going to seminary. But was there something else just in the process, I guess, were there things that you believed that you found were not necessarily true? Were there any underlying beliefs that you were holding on to that were challenged, or maybe just something that you were surprised to learn?
That's a really good question. Mary, I still haven't filled out my second semester.
I know. I'm dogging like 6 of you.
I'm really sorry. It's been really challenging, okay?
I'm not going to let you go. I know where to find you.
Maybe this will serve. I'm just kidding. I should have done that before this so I would have a more articulate
But see, now you can just type that right up after you
Yeah.
talk about it. Yep.
Yes. Yeah, man, what surprised me? Well, the seminary decision, for one, I didn't see that one coming. But I think, I mean, I've been doing ministry and in leadership positions for over a decade now. So not saying that I have everything figured out, because on most days I feel that is the farthest thing from the truth.
Mm-hmm.
But went in thinking like, okay, like I know how to do a lot of these things. I trust Mary. I want to learn from her. So I'm just kind of like open to see what happens. So, and maybe was a little bit surprised at the new understandings that I uncovered, or some of the new things that came out of it. I learned quickly, I wanted to dedicate 20 to 30 minutes at the end after each class period to jot down my thoughts, observations, strategies, dreams, ideas that came to me about ministry or Revive or something else. And that was the most, I mean, not that class was not productive, but that launched me into some of the best things. Like, for example, one day, Bill Withers came and talked about strategy. And at the end of that, I realized I wanted to have a strategy team for Revive. So ended up putting it together in January, February, and March. And March is when the pandemic hit here in Iowa. And I used that strategy team so much in the first several weeks of this pandemic. And so I don't think I necessarily had any surprises in class, but just as I look back at the arc of the whole thing, I can see little things all over of what God was up to. So maybe less surprise and just more, I'm kind of in wonder at the whole thing.
I love that you say that, because it wasn't that you necessarily, for you anyway, you didn't necessarily have a light bulb moment during the class itself, but when you were applying and assimilating and integrating the things that you had learned into practical, the very practical in and day out of your ministry, you saw it come to life in ways that I feel like sometimes we look for the aha moment, right? Sometimes we look for the light bulb to go off. We want the big thing. We want to have this experience and feel a certain thing, right? But you found it was in the nitty gritty of the work where you...
Yeah, dang it.
Yeah, right?
It all.
That. And so, Mary, what about you? What was something that surprised you, or that maybe you learned from getting this off the ground?
God has to teach me this over and over and over again. So I'm a 3 on the Enneagram. I know we're going to talk about that in a minute, but so I am, as a 3, I'm just so focused on achievement and performance and get it right and do it. It can't just be an A, it has to be an A+. So I have this I feel like I have this download, and Jamie knows this. I had like 8 people in mind. And so when I talked to senior leadership, when I talked to Mike and Bill about it, they were like, well, we have a lot more people than 8 people that we want you to start working with. And so they start building this list, and I start to stress out. Like, this is getting really big, and I have no idea if this is going to work or not. And so one of the components of the program that I was really passionate about was that every single person in the cohort should have a mentor. And so I knew I needed to recruit as many mentors as there were in the class. Well, as it turns out, God makes it really clear to me, like, people had to apply for it. They had to interview for it. I mean, if they put that much work into it, they on the pre-side, they were gonna commit to. And so 17 people very clearly show up. So I go, I have to find 17 mentors. I build a list of 19 people. And Amanda, you're one of the mentors. And to the person, every single person said yes. I had more mentors than I even needed. And that's when I just went, God, this has nothing to do with me. This is totally yours, and you're going to provide in ways I can't even comprehend. And I got to quit gripping so darn tightly, thinking, I've got to perform and make this happen. This is yours. I just get to be on the ride, right? And that was a huge, I'm not sure that surprise is the right word, but delight. It's like, I get it now. I get it now. I'm an older adult and I finally get it. You know, I got hold so tightly. So that has just been a joy. And even in the middle of COVID and how literally we pivoted on a dime, and the next week we were having class on Zoom, I was like, you can't make that stuff up.
Right. Yeah. Yes, I was a mentor for one of the participants in the program, and I just found that to be just such a wonderful experience, just to have that time, just kind of sit down and because I either talk to people, it seems like, who they have a really great idea and they really want to go, and we're trying to figure out like how to help them do that. Or on the pastoral side of things too, I talk to people who really are struggling for a variety of different reasons and a variety of different ways. But meeting with one of the participants in this program and just being able to, like, it was just hopeful, you know, like, we're doing the best we can and we want to bring our best and we want to understand the world better. To me, that has so much to do with it. I want to understand the world better. I want to understand the people who, for right now, just because of experience and maturity in the workplace, and I don't even mean maturity, I mean experience and length of time in the workplace. There are people who have a lot of authority over what my path is going to look like, and how do I understand them, and how do I help us both be on the same page and recognize that we want the same things. That's timeless. That's timeless.
It really is. And the other thing I just wanted to add to was, and Jamie knows my passion about this, but really, if you do follow historical patterns and generational patterns, you know that every 100 or 125 years, things are really going to be disrupted. And having been in the newspaper business and watching it be totally disrupted and experiencing that, and then working with churches are going to change. I knew that. I mean, it was kind of the same thing that was happening with newspapers. Like, the older generation was dying, and how do you get the new generation in? I mean, so many similarities. So I felt like this next generation, the millennials, are going to have to lead us. They're going to remember when I said this in class, Jimmy, you're going to have to lead and experience things we have never, ever we don't even comprehend. We don't even know. And then this happened, and I'm like, oh my. That happened a little bit faster than I thought it was going to.
You're like, I knew I'm prophetic. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that. I would not say that. I would not say that. But that was a surprise.
Well, any thoughts on that, Jamie? What?
Yeah, I forgot that you did say that, but you definitely did, Mary. So.
Because there were a lot of people in the class going, what in the world is she talking about?
Like, I remember being like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like, our world is changing more rapidly than it has in the past. We will have to face things that people haven't before. But yeah, okay, cool. And so I think our cohort of people that through this the first pass at Lead with is incredible. I can't wait to keep doing ministry alongside these millennial leaders that we have at Hope. And it's funny because we have people from different campuses and then in various life stages. Some are married, some are parents, some are supervisors at Hope. We have supervising other people. We have some who oversee ministries, some who are where I was 10 years ago and are starting out. It's really exciting to be a part of something that big, and to even see in my own generation all of the nuances of how we're positioned to do different things at this point in time. And yeah, I'm really excited to keep working with everyone, not just in this class, but just in general, doing them together.
Yeah.
It's been cool too, because for me, kind of watching from the outside, that the cohort didn't know each other. They knew of each other's, but didn't really know each other across campuses. And now, one of them made the comment in our April 30th conversation, we really are one church right now. It's not just one church, multiple campuses. We're one church because there's so much integration now among the campuses for worship and programming and teaching. And I think what a jump start it was in those relationships, that those relationships started early before all of this transpired.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for joining us for the Women of Hope Summer Conversation Series. We'll be back next Monday with a new episode. Have a great week.